Welcome to the University of the West Indies, the Department of Literatures and English Cape Lecture Series for 2021. This is the first time that the department will be offering the Literatures and English Cape Lecture Series online. One of the advantages of that is that you will be able to access the lectures at your own convenience after they have been posted. But one of the disadvantages is that you will not have that direct and immediate interaction with the presenter that you would have in a face-to-face situation. So I encourage you to post your questions in the chat. The presenter will be able to see these questions and will respond to them at the end of the presentation. Another disadvantage of the online mode of delivery is that sometimes it can be pretty easy to be distracted in the online classroom. I suggest that you use note-taking as a way of remaining focused. Have your notebook next to you and write notes from the lecture. I expect that many of you intend to continue your studies at university after you've completed your CAPE exam. And I hope that most of you have already applied to the University of the West Indies. Be sure to go on to the Literatures in English website to look at the programs we offer to see if any of them are a fit for you. In addition to our long-standing BA Literatures in English, we also offer a BA in Liberal Studies, a BA in Film Studies, and most recently, a BA in Writing, Literature, and Publishing. If you have any questions or queries, you can contact us using the contact information given on the website. You can easily access the website through the UWI Mona homepage. Click on Faculties and then click on the name of the department. We'd be happy to hear from you. I hope you enjoy our CAPE lecture series, and I hope that you find it instructive and useful as you prepare for your CAPE Literatures in English exams. Good luck in your exams, and I hope to see you at UWI Mona, and especially in the Department of Literatures in English. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to the Department of Literatures in English CAPE Lecture Series 2021. I'm Lisa Brown and I'm here to present to you today on A Raisin in the Sun by Lorraine Hansberry. My presentation is entitled The Check Only Goes So Far, and the check is my focus for our discussion. I hope this presentation will help you to be able to write about drama in a very effective way. So even though you might have quite a bit of information on the check, I hope this presentation will help to supplement your expression of ideas. And so this morning's presentation, which is pre-recorded, will help you to develop these skills. So this presentation focuses on the insurance check. And I know you have had extensive discussions about this prop. The check is an important prop in the play, and you want to be able to begin your expression of the ideas by focusing and naming the fact that it is a prop. It is connected to other props. And so when you are doing a dramatic element, you want to be sure of understanding how it is connected to other props. You might think of other props in the play and say, well, the check is the thing that has made this thing possible. The other important thing about the insurance check is that it's thematically important to the play's exploration of the American dream. It's very important that I make you know that Lorraine Hansberry has articulated her vision of the American dream. She does this in the play when she has Walter dream of the big car, of his wife wearing pearls, of him having a butler, all of these elements are really what Hansberry wants us to understand as part of the American dream. In your research, you would have known that the American dream is this myth that is circulated about wealth and success, and that if you work hard enough, you can get all the riches that you want. So one of the things is the check itself is putting us in thematic connection with the American dream. The playwright uses the check, and even though we've said thematically it's connected to the American dream, we're now saying dramatically. And a lot of students miss this. When we talk about dramatic use, we are thinking about what happens to the play, what happens to the check in the course of the play. So if you and I went to the theater, one of the things that we would have to be doing is we'll be looking for the check. So the dramatic use of the check is going to tell us how and why the family decides to move to Clybourne Park. So the how and the why are important aspects of your writing about the check. So you're not only saying that the check as a prop will help to fulfill the American dream or not fulfill the American dream, but you're saying also that it is going to be important, crucial to having the family decide to move to Clybourne Park. These are very important shades of expression that need to be articulated in your responses. So, what are stage properties? Properties or props. You will know either word. And so part of what you need to do is to show that you know what props are. And generally, props are objects, things that are on stage. And they are objects, regular, ordinary things that we would recognize as an audience. Generally, they are movable. They are things that are going around the stage. We can follow them, we can see them, we can identify them. They usually are connected to the thematic concerns of the work, right? To identify something as a prop is to say that thing represents that meaning, and it's so important to do this. Props always are connected to important dramatic aspects. Plot, characterization, costume, dialogue. In other words, when you are talking about any one thing in a play, you are really and truly focusing on that one thing in order to connect it to another. And that's the beauty about this thing. Even though the prop or the object or the element might seem arbitrary, it is in fact connected. It's doing work. And that's the dramatic work. The element is working to help the audience to understand something. And perhaps most important for props is that the audience can see it. Remember, a play is a play when it's performed. And although you're studying the play in the classroom and you're reading and you can go back and check your pages, you must see the thing. There are in this play especially some very interesting things that Hansberry does. But the prop, the check, we're looking for that check. And that whole idea of looking and the audience seeing and recognizing is an important domain of what a prop does. So even as we focus on prop for this discussion and presentation, you have to know your elements. And preparing for your exam, going in, you will have some ideas of elements that you want to discuss. Let's look at the play. For example, Assegai brings dresses for Benita from Africa. Those are not props, they're costumes, right? They become costumes. Benita puts them on and, we get a bit of a laugh especially when we see her expressions. Ruth is standing at the ironing board at one stage in Act 1. The ironing board is not a prop, and the iron is not a prop. This is part of the set. This is part of the living room of the house of the Youngers. And so this is actually something connected to the set. Bobo, our friend who comes in with the bad news, is his name is significant because it means either both someone who is silly or somebody who is a representation of materialist and bohemian culture. So Bobo is a seemingly insignificant kind of person and character, but he's character, right? So character, costume, set. These are other elements that you could focus on. But in this presentation, we are looking at props. Can you identify another important stage prop in Hansberry's play? I give you a minute to think about that. I know probably what comes to everybody's mind. And the next thing I would ask you, how is this prop that you're identifying connected to the check? How is this prop that you are thinking of connected to the check? You see, you have to connect things. Don't keep things separate. Connect them. Let's have your answers. Please put your responses in the comment section. I will see them at some point and respond in due time. Now, you are going to be using Hansberry's play with another play from this for this section. And so in finding out or trying to connect the two plays, because you will have to connect Hansberry's play to either the Caribbean or the British play, you have to be able to know what is the dramatic significance of the prop, not only in Hansberry's play, but in the other play as well. So there's a process, right? The first thing you want to do is to identify the element, and the element that I'm using is prop, and I've identified my prop as the insurance check. So you do your identification and know what you're talking about. The next thing is you want to identify when it becomes visible. When does the audience see this prop? And these are details that you can do, that you will be required to do before you get into the exam, right? This is how you prepare and you begin to put your ideas together. Identify when it becomes visible, when it finally comes on stage, and the audience can see it. Then you comment on which characters are involved with this element, with this prop. Your opinion matters. I mean, when you think of Hansberry's play, which character seems absolutely enamored and fascinated and driven by the arrival of the check? Which character, on the other hand, seems like, well, it's just another day? Once you make this kind of identification, then you have your material, right? You comment and say, this character is connected to the check in this way, or this character is connected to the check in the other way. It's a rule of thumb of literary criticism. If you identify the strongest character who you would link with the check, also in your mind's eye, identify the weakest, because you are going to be able to use that to have a discussion. Note when and how the prop is no longer visible. In Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun, the check comes and the check goes. It's no longer visible. You want to be able to follow the prop. Follow the prop. Watch it throughout the play and make your notes. And as you go to the other plays, the Caribbean or the British, you do the same. And in that way, you will be able to talk about how both playwrights use the prop. Finally, comment on what the playwright wants you to feel. What is the intended effect? Why has the playwright used the prop as he or she has? And this is adding to the thing. Why does the playwright introduce the prop here? Why does the playwright take away the prop here? These kinds of commentary, there are no answers in the book. These answers rely on your own interpretation of what the playwright wants to achieve. So let's focus on the insurance check in A Raisin in the Sun. The insurance check is specific because it does several things. Among them is it advances the plot. The play is about how a family moves into their own house and leaves the projects. How does the insurance check allow this or show this to happen? Right? So one of the uses of the insurance check is to advance plot, to push that action along. Another important effect and use of the check is that it grounds conflict, right? The central conflict. How the funds from the check are to be used reveals the conflicts in values between Lena and her children. And we could say that, A Raisin in the Sun is really about mama versus the kids, the older generation versus the newer generation. Now, that's not the answer. That's one way of reading it, one way of understanding it. Your interpretation might also suggest that, well, the conflict is really about not having enough versus being content with living a simple life. Either of those expressions will be very good. You need to trust your mind and know what you think that conflict is. Part of what I'm saying today is the insurance check functions in helping us to understand this important conflict, both advancing the plot and helping us to understand the central conflict. The insurance check also does two other things, and these are just options that I'm pointing out for you. You can choose to focus on anything that you think is most important. It reveals characterization. Both Walter and Benita have very different goals from Lena and Ruth. And if you pay attention to the play, you will realize that Lena and Ruth are very much twin souls. Their value system is very close, very different from Benita and Walter. And we learn about them because as both Benita and Walter talk about their dreams, we realize their dreams are largely dependent on money. And we notice that Mama and Ruth kind of want to just kick back and hang with the family. So the check coming, that important thing, check coming, helps us to reveal who these characters are and what is important to them. And in terms of set, one of the things that happens in the play, and I think that an estimated time for the play is about 30 days, 20 something days. We get a few weeks. I don't know how many weeks that would be, probably about 2 or so weeks. So the play has a time span. And as every time we see a new act, the house is more and more disordered. And so the idea about why the house is disordered is because they're getting ready to move. And that's very important because the set literally changes before our eyes, right? And it's because that check comes and the family is getting ready to move. So I've given you 4 points. Here we have revealing characterization and alters the set as 2 other kinds of effects, functions of the prop, the insurance check. So to focus now on expanding our ideas, we've made some general statements about things, about the way that the check is used. So let us expand some of our thoughts, because here is where we get to the core of things in terms of the dramatic importance, the dramatic function and significance. The check is highly expected. There is a sense of tension, and everybody, it seems, is interested in asking about the check. So the audience becomes very expectant. And so the conversation between the characters are dominated and driven by the check. Check come. Even Travis says, Friday, today's Friday, check coming tomorrow. And Mama just simply says, oh, that old thing. But Hansberry wants the audience to begin to expect this check. So as a prop, the check does not come on stage in the very beginning of the exposition of the play. The check is there and it's being discussed, but it doesn't materialize. And as audience, we're sitting down and saying, where is the check? When is the check going to come? And this is the anticipation. The audience is made to wait and to begin to wonder about the check. So there's great dramatic suspense, I could say, anticipation perhaps. It's not a frightening suspense, it's more like, where is it? Where is it? So the audience is keenly engaged on seeing this check that is supposed to arrive. The other thing is that the check, when it does come, provides a down payment. Mama decides to use the money to pay down on a house. Now, one of the things that you have to do is when you go to your text and you begin to think about examples, think about why Mama goes outside and pays down on a house. She goes out and pays down on the house, and she does it almost in a sense of not seeing Walter act the way he should act, right? She goes and she pays down on the house, and that's important because in advancing the plot, the check comes and she does an action. She pays down for the house, and that down payment is what makes the idea of the move possible in the play. To further this whole idea about advancing the plot, the check provides Walter with seed money to start a business. And you notice I've put seed in inverted commas. Mama has paid down for the house in Clybourne Park, but Walter's business is also something she wants him to have. So Walter gets money to give to Willie Harris, and they're to meet with Bobo and they're to bribe a man. And this whole idea of bribe is perhaps a hint, probably the second or third hint, that things might not turn out as well. But the check provides that money to sow those seeds. Now the money gets lost and Walter has to make a choice between two things: money and life. And you're probably saying, well, how did you get money and life? And I'm going to show you how. Because in focusing just on the check, I am beginning to get close to what Hansberry has set up for me to pay attention to. And this is always useful. When you focus on one element or one aspect of the drama, you can see the dramatist make changes. And the final thing is the play ends when Walter chooses life and rejects Linda's money and moves out of the projects, where they live, where they have to share a bathroom with the whole floor. So in expanding on advancing plot, I have got 5 points. You don't have to talk about all 5. But you see that I am linking the check to the different aspects of the plot. And in doing that, I am having some idea and I'm saying these things are connected. The check has provided X and Y and Z. And this is part of what Hansberry wants us to see in order to get that message that she eventually brings to the resolution. So your framing of the ideas has to be clear and spot on so that the examiner who is listening and who is reading knows that you are focused and clear. Hansberry's use of the check. So we spoke about advancing plot, but we have to be specific. We have to get closer. We have to make specific statements to show that we know what the dramatist is doing. So the playwright delays the arrival of the check. The audience only hears about the check. And by delaying the arrival of the check, anticipation in the audience is built, and the audience come to share the experience of the characters who are saying, where's the check? Check come. So we share that same kind of expectation. The second thing is Hansberry centers the arrival of the check as a moment of family pride and dignity. So now here is something that you have a chance to analyze. Go to the end of the act and look at how Hansberry presents the arrival of the check. Let me just read for you. Stage directions say, the bell sounds suddenly and sharply, and all three are stunned, serious and silent mid-speech. So Hansberry has the check come in with a sound effect, right? In spite of all the other conversations, the distractions of the morning, this is what they have been waiting for. And the audience has been waiting as well. For even Travis, who looks helplessly from his grandmother to his mother, Ruth is the first to respond and come to life again. So when Travis actually goes down the steps and brings it, the stage directions again tell us about this. Travis comes up. Travis bursts back into the room. So the check is greeted with a whole lot of excitement, and it's a family. Travis bursts back into the room. He holds the envelope high above his head like a little dancer. His face is radiant and he is breathless. He moves to his grandmother with sudden, slow ceremony and puts the envelope into her hands. She accepts it and then merely holds it and looks at it. This is what I mean by creating this dignity and pride and ceremony. So the check that we've waited long for gets its flourish. It doesn't just come in from the mailman, it comes in with ceremony. Why does Hansberry treat it like this? She treats it like this because she wants the audience to understand how important it is, understand that there is significance, understand that mama is perhaps emotionally overcome, that the audience looking on feels the sense of almost a tear. We feel so proud of the family, and we're like, the check has finally arrived, right? And these are the ideas that you write. These are the ideas. The section, the stage directions are operating, the sound effects are operating. Visually, Travis's actions are beautiful, and it's as if Mama is this great matriarch who gets handed this check. Those are the things you put in your answers. So Walter is the only one who is not here when the check is treated with such ceremony. He comes in later, and eventually he gets to hold the check. And perhaps as part of your explanation, part of your analysis of the scene where the check comes visibly on stage, you can go and you can talk about how Walter himself responds to it. He counts the zeros. But Hansberry has Mama do something important. The check goes off stage and the check disappears. The check becomes something else. And what replaces the check? Cash. Cash in an envelope. Mama has put the down payment on the house and she wants Walter to have some cash. And Walter gets the cash. And the cash now becomes a very different kind of prop, but still very much connected to the check because the cash has come from the proceeds of the check. So Walter gets cash, and we know that Walter has been wanting money. And so the emotion that comes with the cash, the check is not physically there anymore. What has replaced it is the cash. And Walter has the cash in his hand. What does Walter do with the cash? Well, he does give some money back. And so there's a sense of celebration. And now, so you see the check breeds two kinds of celebration. The celebration of its arrival. That's what Hansberry is doing. He's saying, listen, man, we have to celebrate. And then there's a celebration where they kind of spend some time with Mama and they give her a gardening tools, and Travis gives her a hat. And so the hat, the gardening tools, and the cash become other kinds of props coming from the check. So physically, the check is no longer there. What we see, what the audience sees, is the cash, the gardening tools, and the hat. How long do those things stay on stage? Not very long. So what was a prop that was visible has left the stage in its physical state, and the things connected to it, other props, the cash, the gardening tools, and the hat, have replaced it. What this means is that we're in for a shift of ideas. So we have to revisit the thematic significance to incorporate those ideas with what we've talked about dramatically. And one of the things is that in the first two acts of the play, the check seems to represent money. The monetary significance seems to be very important, although that's not always the case for all characters. Money, we know, and we've talked about the American dream, is the sense that money can make dreams come true, perhaps has been circulated as well. One of the things that we talked about when we looked at Benita and Walter, they see money as being very important in realizing the dreams. For Benita, education is very important. And for Walter wants to be a businessman, who gets to count money and gets to give pearls to his wife. So the first significance of the check is this monetary value. Hansberry seems to be saying, yes, money does make dreams come true. And that's why we were so happy for Walter. When Walter got the cash, we were happy for him, because at that point we say his dreams will now come true. He can give Willie Harris some money and perhaps they will now start this liquor business. So there's a sense that with all the movement of the check, with the cash and all of that, perhaps the dreams that have been articulated so far can finally come true. So, does the American dream come true for the Younger family? The play is very much engaging with that question and asking about the way in which money, especially for the African American family, is readily available to create success and to make all their dreams come true. And I think what Hansberry is doing in the play, by introducing the check and by showing us what the check is able to create in the play, is perhaps saying that the American dream is actually very, very problematic. And that that idea of success and money, that success money dream connection, is very difficult to navigate. Money is important, but what does money create? Right? So Hansberry is constantly asking this question about what money can really do. Now, we know that once the gifts are brought, the check disappears, and I'm reiterating because when we talk about focus, we have to establish the way in which we understand the prop as being significant in multiple ways. So the check disappears from the play, and the loss of the money becomes central. You could almost see the loss of the money as manifested in the disappearance of the check. It's, the check is spent, the money goes, and we kind of say, hold on, should we have thought that the money would go? Perhaps it's a bit of a kind of foreshadowing and stuff, but that's something you can think about. But the check disappears. It's no longer visible to the audience. We no longer hear anything. All we hear is the celebration about the mama getting her hat and so on. And it is not until Bobo comes in that we realize that the money is lost. And that is why I have this title for my presentation. The check does not go far. What do I mean? Money can only do so much. The check as a prop goes from one limited point in the play to another. It is not visible, and this is why I'm saying it's not visible in the exposition. It comes in, there's a lot of celebration, a lot of happiness going on, but the happiness is short-lived. The check does not go far. So what does go far is the other question. And this underscores the point I made about the dramatist doing a shift, giving you what seems to be the issue and the things that she agrees with, only to stop and shift midway, right? And so the check does not go far because it can only purchase so much and no more. Hansberry's shift is to identify for the audience what does go far, what does last, what does have more value than money. And it is in this point that our wording, our expression of the use of the prop is important. Notice now, I'm going to have a couple of examples. After the check arrives, Mama and Walter have an important exchange. Mama says, "Son, how come you talk so much about money?" Walter, with immense passion, "Because it is life, Mama." It is the contrast here, money and life. This is the choice that Hansberry wants the audience to see being made in the play. How does Walter come to make the decision, to make the choice between life and money? This is the quotation that puts it together. But it comes only after the check arrives. After the check, it doesn't come before, it comes after. And so the check becomes an important way of signaling us, that, hold on, there's a choice to be made. As audience looking on, we have to know what is of more value. Once Walter hears that Willie Harris has stolen the money, or taken the money, Walter screams, "That money is made out of my father's flesh." Now, I want to make a point here, and it could have something to do with how we reveal information. You might say that you know that the check has a kind of human component because it is the proceeds from Big Walter's life. But that point doesn't become clear until Walter blurts this out. And the play is about Walter coming to this realization. Walter finally realizes that what made the check important wasn't the number of zeros. It was that it was his father's flesh. And so you will have information about the significance and the symbolism of the check. But if you clump all of that information into one and not show how the dramatist reveals the thing, then your point is lost. And that is why sometimes when you have information and you say, but I know all of this, it's not that you don't know. It's that you have to articulate your ideas carefully. After the check arrives, we know that the choice is between money and life. Mama loves life, Walter loves money. Hansberry has to show us that Walter must get to a point where he recognizes that the check, that prop that we've been discussing, is not just money. It really is. And his father, and Hansberry puts this in all caps. That's not a dramatic element. It's just there for exaggeration, for exclamation, because he shouts that money is made out of my father's flesh. And that declaration, and that's the shift. That's when Hansberry says, okay, it's not about money. The playwright has her major character. The character so fascinated and so wanting money, finally see the check as more than just money. So in your response, you say, while the check is literally or on the surface about money, Hansberry wants her major character, Walter, to gradually come to the understanding that the check is more than money. The audience hears him scream after the loss of the check, that money is made out of my father's flesh. And that declaration makes the audience realize that Walter has finally begun to realize how he has been very different from Mama in his attitude towards the check. So it's not that you don't know this. It's not that the information is wrong. It's about your revelation of it, right? And you have to gradually set up the argument. Remember, you are arguing. You have to set it up. So you save your thing to make this point. You know the check has all these kinds of significance, but you don't just push it up the examiner and say the check is this, the check is that, the check is that. You making an argument, you have to begin to set up the ideas so that your argument has punch and impact. So that is a very important point to be made there. What does the shift mean? It means that the insurance check is more about Big Walter's life than cash for dreams. And this is something that we see. The audience begins to quickly recognize that. $10,000 doesn't go far. You remember the title of my presentation? The check only goes so far. A few possessions and the down payment. I think he has lost most of the money, right? $3,500 for the down payment, probably about $200 for the gardening things, if as much. He put beneath his money there, everything, most of the money is lost. So dramatically, this is a very difficult thing for the family to experience. Money plus hard work do not achieve the American dream. Not in this case. The check as representing Big Walter's hard work didn't do it at all. Didn't do it at all. And I think there's a way in which the audience is asked um, to really understand that pain of the loss of the money, which you definitely will, because Benita begins to trash Walter terribly. And that helps the audience to kind of feel, yes, curse him. How could he throw away that money? And there's a pain that we feel. It is your response to what happens on stage that you use in your articulation of ideas about this prop. Now, so the check is gone, the money is gone, the cash is gone, the hat and the gardening tools are somewhere packed up in a box. What does this mean? How do we move towards a resolution? Some other dramatic element will give us the message towards the end. So each dramatic element plays a little part. It could be a little part, it could be a big part, but one of the things that you must not do is to get into the habit to try to find an element that does everything. I know some of the aspects of drama are very strong, and you can follow them to the end. You talk about characterization, but even characterization shifts. And that's something as students you have to understand. There is no one thing that will say everything. Each aspect is doing its own job. And that's something you need to just accept and begin to look at what else takes over. So the American dream has many students concerned. And the thing about the play, what the play reveals, is that the younger family dreams are achieved, not the American dream. The dream of Big Walter and Mama to move out of that same apartment has been realized. And I keep going back to the American dream because thematically that's my focus in this presentation, because of its connection to the prop. The other thing that I think we have to perhaps think about is that the history of the slave past, African American enslaved past, has called for a greater value of life over money, right? And I think there are parts in the play when I really and truly think that Mama is just really overbearing. But I think this American emphasis on money, is something that writers are always very skeptical about. And in literature, American literature itself is always asking that question about, well, where does money function in something? So American literature is always not necessarily interrogating the American dream as much as asking, in a culture where money is important, what happens if you don't have it? What happens if it's not easy? What happens if you are like other persons who are without the kind of wealth that seems to represent success? And it's very important that if students reading the play today, that you begin to recognize hints here about the kind of African American cultural value. You now begin to understand why African Americans are so incensed and deeply troubled when black men are killed, because life has always had to be more important than money. Right? And so this idea of American dream, it's something that it's a myth, meaning it's just an idea that is neither proven or reinforced or anything like that. It's something that you keep saying, but it's a great impossible. And Hansberry is saying, this is investment is money is very dangerous. This get rich thing is very dangerous. And she proves that when money is easily lost. So the check, notice the check is not on stage for very long. That is the hint, audience. This is important, but not that important, right? And so it goes as quickly, almost as quickly as it comes. African Americans might have to sacrifice their lives to achieve that dream of financial, material and financial success. So Walter doesn't get the pearls. He doesn't get the car with the white walled tires. He doesn't get the butler. But Ruth is going to have a baby. Travis is going to have a brother. And we're going to be together. And we're moving. We've come a long way, and we can get out of the projects, where the roach and the rats are. Even though Clybourne Park offers this sense of threat and apprehension, but we're moving, and that's the point. That is the point. That is Hansberry's thesis, that the American dream is just out there. It has to be out there because there are other dreams that are more important. Every good argument has a counter argument, and you have been taught well by your teachers. Make a on the other hand, and the other hand here is, so the check disappears. That prop that we've spoken about at great length has disappeared, and we need some statements. The check is a prop that Hansberry uses to show the limit of money. The check is no longer visible to the audience after Act 2. The character who has been most affected by the check is Walter Lee. Hansberry's characterization of Walter is connected to his need for money from the check. So here it is now that we need to set up a counter argument. What else helps us to move on? What is the function of other things? What else becomes important now that the check as a prop has disappeared? The answer, dialogue. Dialogue. Something that is not an object, something that is relational, something that is about speech and power. So in Act 3, Hansberry builds the play's climax by having Walter called Lindner. Mr. Lindner, is the man from the lovely Clybourne Park Citizens Association. And so the removal of the check means that there is something else that is more important. And I started off by saying dialogue, something relational, something that is connected. Whereas a prop is an object, dialogue is about the kind of interaction and the kind of revelation between people. So Hansberry builds the play's climax. And so he calls Linda and he tells Mama, "Don't cry, Mama. Understand. That white man is going to walk in that door able to write checks for more money than we had." Checks? The audience is probably looking for a check. Yeah, we probably are. But Hansberry has taken the physical check off the stage. But she has Walter articulate and remind the audience that what Linda brings in is another check. He offers another check, perhaps to replace the check that we spent so much time looking at. So in a sense, the dialogue begins to reveal things about meaning and about how checks might be important. The physical check is gone, but the dialogue reminds the audience that the check has the possibility of coming back. So the audience is saying, check, another check is coming, but The next part is important. He's dialoguing with the man, and the man is Linda. And the important thing here is Hansberry has Walter deliver an emotional monologue of submission before his family. In order for the play to climax, there has to be a kind of really low point. And Walter rehearses on stage how he's going to talk to Mr. Linda. And that's also another section that we could analyze. He's going to say, please, Mr. Bossman, please, Mr. Whiteman. And he begins to talk to the family, and the family is horrified. More importantly, I think the audience is pained. It is a very difficult scene to watch, that we feel that he has given up and we're disappointed. I think this is the point in the play when we probably would cry for Walter, because we say, is Walter really going to give up like this? And of course, the feeling of disappointment, that feeling of pain and shame and embarrassment, and the idea that Walter is just like, every other man who's lost money, is transformed in his dialogue with Linda. It is the dialogue with Linda that ultimately reveals Walter's growth as a character. Walter comes to face Mr. Linda, and Mama insists that Travis be there to see and to hear what he's saying. And Walter's dialogue begins in a very slow and hesitating manner. The stage direction tells us how many times he's fumbling and how uncertain he is. And that Hansberry is able now to show a different side of Walter. This is the first time that Walter is not shouting, he's not in an extreme mode, he's not quarreling or groveling. But he has Travis right there. And this is important. By having Travis stand in the middle of the stage, listening to the dialogue between Linda and Walter, Hansberry shows the audience what really matters. This is the point where Walter must stand up. You remember how the play began? The play begins with Ruth saying, Walter Lee, it's time for you to get up. And here he is, getting up. What matters is not an object, like the check or money. And Walter finally says, there have been several generations of us, and this son is the next one. And we're moving into Clybourne Park. And Ruth says, hallelujah. Mama is the one who makes the statement to the audience. She's talking to Ruth, but it's for the audience. He finally come into his manhood today, didn't he? Yes, he did. So what props did not complete, dialogue and characterization brings to the end. Because dialogue and characterization are connected to the human. Props connected to objects. Objects, like money, matter less than people and family. So there you have it. What matters is life. And life is more important than anything else. The check is an important prop that the audience greets with anticipation. It represents two value systems, money and the life of the patriarch. One comes before the other. Hansberry limits the visibility of the check because she wants us to know how limited it is, that it really cannot go so far. What matters more is life, which becomes clear through the dialogue and characterization. And that dialogue and characterization is about Walter Lee becoming the man he needs to become. So we're closing. We're in closing statements, and we are clear We're focused. A Raisin in the Sun focuses on Walter Lee's growth and courage as more important than money in the future of the family. The American dream is driven by a need for money that prevents people from seeing what really lasts and what is more valuable. Hansberry's use of the check as a prop that has limited presence on stage helps the audience to see that money doesn't last, but love and family does. As you now move to analyzing the other texts that you will put with Hansberry, I want to remind you about a couple of important points in responding and writing about drama. Everything the playwright does is for the audience, not the characters. We tend to read the plays as, Walter is making Benita angry or Mama is making Benita embarrassed. All of that is really for the audience, and so in your response, you have to realize that this is being done to get an effect give you the effect that you are supposed to have. And the dramatic and thematic effect is what you think. It's what you see, it's what you think, it's what you feel, what you hear. All of these are about you, right? You won't find a critic who will tell you what you feel, but you might find some critics that you agree with. But you have to understand that articulating your own ideas about the effect of the situations, be it characterizations, be it stage properties, costumes, sound effects, all of those things are about what they do to you. It's you and Hansberry. Dramatic elements work together. Everything works to put things in its place. The check does its job. It heightens the tension in the exposition. It reveals character. It moves the plot along. And it reveals conflict, right? Once the check and the money are lost, characterization and dialogue carry the play to its climax and resolution. Simple thesis, right? And so in your looking at other plays, you want to perhaps find a prop or some other element. I've hoped that this presentation would have helped you in shaping your responses, shaping your analysis, and the information that you have garnered so far in your studies. In closing, thank you so much for being a part of this lecture series. All the best in your exams. Prepare well. Don't over-prepare. Follow your element. Do your analysis. Note shifts. Things do change. And if you're a student of literature, you know that that is definitely a fact. Remember, it is how the audience responds, and you are the audience, to what the playwright does. And that is where the examiners are looking for, your articulation of that. Sit down, practice writing, right? And I hope this has been helpful. I wish you all the best, and I hope that you do well. I know you will. All the best, and thank you.
Shit.